My daughter looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Either serve my husband or get out." No hesitation. No shame. I didn't argue. I just smiled, picked up my suitcase, and walked away. 7 days later, my phone was blowing up, 44 missed calls, and every single one was from her. That's when I knew they'd finally realized what they'd lost. If you've ever been underestimated, disrespected, or cast aside by someone you trusted, you're going to love this. Hit that like button, subscribe, and settle in, because this is one of the most deeply satisfying revenge stories you'll hear all week. The smell of coffee usually meant peace in my mornings, but that day it felt like poison. I was standing in my daughter's kitchen, holding a chipped mug in my hands, staring at the steam like it had all the answers I'd been searching for. Behind me, I could hear him, my son-in-law, Jared, tapping impatiently at his phone. The soft clink of his spoon against the bowl as he shoveled cereal into his mouth. No good morning, no acknowledgement, just presence. I had been living with them for 6 months. 6 months of doing laundry, cooking dinners, cleaning messes I didn't make. I told myself it was temporary, just until I got back on my feet after the divorce. And at first, my daughter Emma seemed glad to have me there. She'd smile, ask about my day, and we'd watch TV together like old times. But little by little, something shifted. Her smiles became smaller, her tone sharper. Jared, on the other hand, didn't even bother pretending to like me. He treated me like some unwanted guest who'd overstayed their welcome. It started with small things. Him forgetting to rinse his dishes, then acting annoyed when I didn't do it. Leaving his shoes in the middle of the hallway so I'd trip. Asking where his dinner was when he came home late, even though I'd cooked enough for everyone. I swallowed it every single time, because Emma loved him, and I didn't want to be the mother who ruined her daughter's marriage. But on that morning, when Emma walked into the kitchen with her hair still damp from the shower, everything changed. She didn't even sit down. She just crossed her arms, looked at me with a face I barely recognized, and said, "Mom, you need to decide. Either you start helping Jared more, making him lunch, ironing his shirts, or maybe you should find somewhere else to stay." The world went silent. Not even the birds outside dared to make a sound. I searched her face for some sign that she was joking, that this was some twisted attempt at humor, but there was nothing. Just cold resolve. In that moment, I felt something inside me fracture. All those nights I'd stayed up with her when she was sick. The birthdays I'd scraped together money to make special. The sacrifices I'd made so she could have a better life. None of it mattered now. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I smiled. A small, almost imperceptible curve of my lips. The kind you give when you know something the other person doesn't. Then, without a word, I set my coffee cup down, walked to my room, and began packing my suitcase. Emma didn't follow me. Jared didn't say a word. They just let me leave. And that was their first mistake. When I closed the front door behind me, the air outside felt different. It was indeed just a crisp bite of early morning wind brushing my cheeks. It was the weight lifting off my chest. The weight of walking on eggshells. Of biting my tongue so hard, I'd tasted blood more times than I could count. I rolled my suitcase down the driveway, the little plastic wheels rattling over the cracks in the pavement. With each step, I told myself, don't look back. It wasn't because I didn't want one last glance at my daughter's house, the place I had once convinced myself was a safe harbor after my marriage fell apart. No, it was because I knew that if I saw her standing there, arms crossed in the doorway, I might crumble. And I couldn't afford to crumble. Not today. Instead, I walked until I reached the corner, then caught a bus into town. I had no solid plan yet, just an old friend as spare room, and enough savings to keep me afloat for a month or two. When I arrived at Linda's place, she didn't ask many questions. She took one look at my face, put the kettle on, and handed me a blanket. We'd been friends for 30 years, and she'd seen me through the divorce, the loss of my mother, and now, this. "You don't have to tell me what happened," she said softly. "Just know you're safe here." Safe. That word lodged in my throat. The first day, I didn't hear from Emma, not even a text. The second day, nothing again. At first, I tried to rationalize it. She's busy. She needs time. Maybe she regrets it, but doesn't know how to reach out. But deep down, I knew Jared had gotten exactly what he wanted. Me gone. And yet, I wasn't angry. Not in the way people expect. It was a cold kind of anger. The kind that doesn't make you yell or slam doors. It makes you think. It makes you remember. It makes you plan. Because here's the thing about raising a child. You give them everything you can. Time, money, energy, and you hope they'll grow up to value that. But when they throw it back in your face, well, sometimes the only way to teach them the value of what they had is to take it away. By day 3, Linda was trying to distract me with errands and old movies, but my mind kept drifting to the little details of Emma's life. The things Jared depended on me for. I remembered how I was the one who handled their laundry. Because Emma worked late and Jared was too tired. I remembered the dinners I cooked, the groceries I paid for without being asked, the mornings I ironed Jared's shirts so he'd look professional at work. And it wasn't just chores. 3 months ago, when Jared's car broke down, who wrote the $1,200 check to help fix it? Me. When their mortgage was behind last year, after Jared invested in some ridiculous crypto scam, who quietly paid the difference to keep them from losing the house? Me. When Emma needed help with her student loan payment during the pandemic, who wired her the money with no questions asked? Me. Every bit of security they had, I'd helped provide. They had no idea how much of their life rested on the quiet, invisible support I'd given. And now, well, let's just say they were about to find out what it felt like without it. On day 4, I started making calls. The first was to the bank. I'd been the one to co-sign on their mortgage when they bought the house. Because Jared's credit score was barely holding at 520, and Emma's income alone wasn't enough. The arrangement meant I had certain powers. Powers they probably assumed I'd never use. The second call was to the insurance company. I still carried Emma on my car insurance policy, a leftover from when she was in college and too broke to pay her own premium. Removing her would spike her monthly payment by at least $150. The third was to my lawyer. I wanted to know exactly what I could and couldn't withdraw from the family loan account I'd set up years ago, the one they'd been dipping into for emergencies like concert tickets and weekend getaways. By the end of those calls, the shape of my revenge was becoming clearer. This wouldn't be some dramatic confrontation or screaming match. No, this would be quiet, surgical, the kind of payback that doesn't hit all at once, but creeps in day by day until they're drowning in consequences they never saw coming. On day 5, Emma finally called. I didn't answer. She called again 2 hours later. I ignored it. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, phone buzzing on the nightstand. Each time her name lit up the screen, I imagined her sitting in that kitchen, the same one where she told me to serve her husband or leave, wondering why I was picking up. Part of me wanted to hear her voice, to catch the faint edge of desperation. But a bigger part of me knew it was too soon. The lesson wasn't finished. Day 6, I heard from Linda that Jared had been spotted in town, at the laundromat. The image nearly made me laugh out loud. The same man who once scoffed, "Laundry isn't men's work," now shoving quarters into a machine. That afternoon, my lawyer called back with the green light. Every dollar I'd ever loaned him without paperwork, technically reclaimable. The mortgage. Well, if I stopped making payments on my portion, the bank would come knocking hard. And the best part, I didn't have to say a word to them. The silence itself was part of the punishment. By day 7, my phone was a graveyard of missed calls and unread texts. The number climbed to 12 calls in the morning, 9 more in the afternoon, another 23 overnight. Emma's messages started polite. "Hey Mom, can we talk?" Ben worried. "Mom, please call me back. It's important." And finally, desperate. "I don't know what's going on, but we need you. Please." Jared's freaking out. I let them sit. Every unread message was like a drop of water, wearing away at their confidence, their sense of control. Because here's what they didn't understand. When you burn a bridge with someone who built half your life for you, sometimes that bridge isn't rebuilt. Sometimes it's set on fire, and you're left on the other side, staring at the flames. And I was only getting started. By the start of the second week, my plan wasn't just an idea anymore. It was in motion. The beauty of this kind of revenge is that it doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It's silent, methodical. You start pulling threads one at a time, and before they realize it, the whole fabric of their life starts to come apart. The first thread was the mortgage. When Emma and Jared bought their house 3 years ago, the bank didn't want to approve them. Jared's debt was a swamp, and Emma's salary as a junior graphic designer was barely above minimum wage. The only reason the deal went through was because I stepped in as co-signer. The bank manager had told me back then, "This means you'll be just as responsible for payments as they are." At the time, I thought of it as a safety net for them. I never once imagined using it as leverage. But now, as I sat in Linda's living room with a steaming cup of tea and my phone in hand, I realized leverage was exactly what it was. I called the bank and said the words I knew would make the air on their end of the line go still. "I'd like to stop my portion of the payments, effective immediately." There was a pause. "Ma'am, you understand this will put the account in default within 30 days unless the other party pays the full amount." "Yes," I said, my voice calm and steady. "I understand perfectly." The second thread was the family loan account. It had started innocently enough 5 years ago, after Emma's medical bill wiped out her savings. I opened a joint account, put in $10,000, and told her it was for emergencies only. But over the years, those emergencies somehow expanded to include concert tickets, designer handbags, and Jared's ill-fated attempt to start a barbecue catering business. Now, I walked into the bank, smiled at the teller, and transferred every remaining dollar into my personal account. The balance was smaller than I remembered, only $2,300. But it wasn't the amount that mattered. It was the message. When Emma went to withdraw and found the account empty, she'd know. The third thread was insurance. I left Emma on my car insurance policy because the bulk rate made her payments dirt cheap. Dropping her was as simple as a 2-minute phone call. I didn't even need a reason, just a signature. The rep on the phone told me cheerfully, "Well, her new premium will be recalculated by her own provider." I could almost hear the unspoken, "and it's going to hurt." I didn't tell Linda the full details at first. She just knew I was sorting a few things out. But she noticed my mood changing. The sadness that had clung to me, like a wet coat in the first week, was giving way to something sharper, cleaner. One evening, as we sat watching TV, she gave me a sideways glance. "You're up to something, aren't you?" I smiled faintly. Let's just say, I'm reminding them of something they seem to have forgotten. By midweek, the ripples started reaching Emma and Jared. I didn't hear it from them directly. Of course not. I heard it from Carol, a neighbor of theirs who happened to run into Linda at the market. According to Carol, there had been a scene in the driveway, Jared shouting into his phone, Emma pacing with her arms crossed, the two of them arguing so loudly that even the mailman slowed down. The next day, I got my first voicemail from Jared. "Listen," he started, trying for a steady tone, but failing. "We've got some issues with the mortgage. You probably got some kind of notice too. It's just a mix-up, but we could use your help clearing it up. Call me." I didn't. Instead, I spent the day going through old boxes in Linda's attic. Photos of Emma as a child, birthday cards, drawings she'd made in crayon when she was 7. It was strange. Looking at those pictures, I didn't see the woman who had stood by and let her husband kick me out. I saw the little girl who used to curl up next to me on the couch and ask if I'd read her one more bedtime story. It made me sad for a moment, but then I reminded myself, I hadn't started this. I was only finishing it by Friday. The consequences were no longer quiet ripples. They were waves. The bank had officially sent the mortgage delinquency notice. The joint account was empty. Emma's new car insurance premium had kicked in, adding another $160 a month to their expenses. And if Carol's gossip was accurate, Jared had started working extra weekend shifts just to cover bills. That night, Emma texted me for the first time in over a week. "Mom, I don't know what's going on, but everything is falling apart. Please call me." I stared at the message for a long time. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I could have typed a dozen different responses, some gentle, some cruel. Instead, I locked the phone and set it face down on the table. Saturday morning brought another development. Linda was in the kitchen making pancakes when I heard her laugh out loud. "You're going to love this," she called. She handed me her phone. It was a screenshot from Facebook. One of Jared's friends had posted in the local community group, "Anyone know a good mortgage broker?" asking for a friend who's about to lose his house. The comments were brutal. Half the town seemed to have an opinion. Some people speculated about job loss, others hinted at poor money management. And there, right in the middle, was a reply from a woman I vaguely remembered from one of Emma's barbecues. "I am not surprised. He's been bragging about not needing his mother-in-law anymore. Guess that didn't work out." I almost felt bad for him. Almost. By Sunday evening, the tally of missed calls had hit 27. I hadn't answered a single one. And yet, the real breaking point hadn't come. Not yet. I could feel it building. The desperation in their voices. The subtle shift from annoyance to panic. When I finally picked up the phone, I wanted it to be at the exact moment they realized they were out of options. The moment they would have to admit, out loud, just how much they had depended on me. That moment was coming, and when it did, I'd be ready. By Monday morning, the missed calls counter on my phone had become almost comical. 44 from Jared, 21 from Emma, plus a few from numbers I didn't recognize. I imagined them sitting at their kitchen table, bills spread out like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle that no longer fit together. Mortgage late notice, insurance premium hike, overdraft fee from the joint account. All those little paper cuts adding up to a slow bleed they couldn't stop. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window, letting the sunlight spill across the table. There's a certain peace in knowing you don't have to answer. By noon, the calls stopped. That was my first clue. They were recalibrating. And sure enough, an hour later, I got a text from Emma. "We're coming over to talk. Please be home." She didn't ask. She informed, as if she still thought she could set the terms. I almost laughed. They showed up at Linda's house at 3:14 p.m. On the dot, pulling into the driveway like a pair of storm clouds. Linda, bless her, looked out the window and muttered, "You want me to stay or disappear?" "Stay," I said. "They need an audience." Emma was the first through the door. No hug, no hello, just a tight-lipped "Mom, what is going on?" Her voice was brittle, like she was forcing it to stay level. Jared came in behind her, already on edge. "We've been getting notices. The mortgage is in default. The insurance is..." He stopped himself, jaw tight. "Did you do something?" I sipped my coffee. "I stopped paying for things that aren't my responsibility anymore." Emma blinked, like she didn't understand the words. "But you always helped us." "Not always," I corrected. "Just for the past 7 years. The down payment on your house, the mortgage payments, the insurance, the emergency account you kept draining for non-emergencies. That wasn't permanent, Emma. That was me giving you a hand while you got on your feet. But from what I hear, I'm just a burden now." So I removed the burden. Silence. Heavy, awkward silence. Then Jared exploded. "This is petty. You're just trying to punish us because you couldn't respect boundaries." "This is..." Linda cut him off with a laugh, so sharp it could have sliced glass. "Boundaries? You mean the kind where you tell her she's not welcome in her own daughter's house for Christmas? Those boundaries?" Emma's face flushed. "That wasn't..." "It's just Jared's family was already coming and you didn't want to deal with me." I finished for her. "I heard you. I remember every word." Jared tried to change tactics. "Look, this isn't about Christmas anymore. This is about the fact that we're going to lose the house if you don't help." I set my coffee down and leaned forward just enough for my voice to cut through him. "You mean the house I co-signed for? The house that wouldn't exist without me? The house where you stood in the doorway and told me I wasn't part of the family anymore? That house?" His mouth opened, closed, No words came out. Emma's voice cracked thin. "Mom, please, we can't fix this without you." There it was, the admission, the moment I'd been waiting for. I took my time, letting the weight of it settle between us. "You can fix this without me. You'll just have to change how you live. Sell the car, cut the extras, maybe even sell the house and downsize. People do it every day. You're both adults. It's time you acted like it." Emma's eyes glistened. Jared just stared at the floor. I stood up, walked to the counter, and picked up the stack of mail I'd been keeping. "Here," I said, handing it to Jared. "These are your notices. From now on, they go to your address, not mine." He took them, his fingers twitching like he wanted to crumple them but didn't dare. Linda broke the tension by speaking up from her chair. "You two have some nerve. You know that. Coming here after what you said, expecting her to keep bailing you out. If I were you, I'd be embarrassed." Emma swallowed hard. "We didn't think it would get this bad. That's the problem," I said. "You didn't think." They stood there for another few moments, as if waiting for me to change my mind. I didn't. Finally, Jared shoved the stack of mail under his arm and muttered, "Let's go." He didn't look at me as he walked out. Emma lingered just a second longer, eyes searching mine for some flicker of the mother who used to fix everything for her. I gave her the smallest smile. Not cruel, just final. "Merry Christmas, Emma." The door closed. The car started. Tires crunched on the gravel as they drove away. Linda let out a low whistle. Well, that was satisfying. I exhaled slowly, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. That, I said, was necessary. That night, I slept better than I had in years. Because for the first time, Emma and Jared weren't my problem anymore. They were just two adults facing the real world without a safety net, and I was free. The first sign came 2 weeks later. I was walking back from the grocery store when I passed by the community bulletin board outside the library. Taped to it was a flyer: furniture, appliances, baby gear, tools. Saturday, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. at 42 Sycamore Lane. I knew that address. The following Saturday, I took the long way home just to drive by. Sure enough, their garage door was open, folding tables lined with picture frames, kitchen gadgets, and even that expensive espresso machine ID helped them buy as a treat 3 Christmases ago. Emma was standing near the driveway, trying to smile at passersby, while Jared sat behind a table of power tools, his jaw locked tight. The sight should have made me feel pity. Instead, I felt clarity. They weren't selling these things because they'd had some minimalist epiphany. They were selling them because the bank didn't care about their excuses, only about the overdue numbers on a spreadsheet. By Monday, I started hearing murmurs at church. "Did you hear about Emma and Jared? They might have to move. Word is, the mortgage is months behind." They said it was because of some family drama. It didn't take long for the details to get twisted in the retelling, but the core truth stuck. Their finances had collapsed. Then came the public listing. One night, while scrolling my phone, I saw it. No one likes to see their own child's address in a legal notice. But I reminded myself, this wasn't because of me. It was because of every time they'd chosen luxury over responsibility, ego over humility, and pride over partnership. I had simply stopped shielding them from reality. Emma called again that night. Her voice was soft, almost broken. "Mom, they're going to take the house." "I know," I said quietly. "Can't you, just this once, help us save it?" I took a deep breath. "Emma, if I help now, what happens next time?" "And there will be a next time, because you've never learned to live within your means. You've never had to." She didn't argue. She just whispered, "I don't know what to do." "You'll figure it out," I said. "That's what grown-ups do." The weeks rolled forward, and the cracks spread. Jared's new truck vanished from the driveway one day. Repo man Dan Tenock politely. The HOA newsletter mentioned multiple violations for yard upkeep, which I suspected had more to do with unpaid fees than actual grass length. Neighbors who once waved now kept their distance, as if foreclosure might be contagious. Linda and I would sometimes sit on her porch in the evenings, watching the sun dip low, sipping tea. "Do you ever feel guilty?" she asked one night. "Every day," I admitted. "But guilt's a funny thing. It used to make me do whatever Emma wanted. Now it just reminds me I'm not her bank account." Linda smiled. "You gave them years. They gave you one bad Christmas. I think the scales are balanced." The day of the auction was cold and gray. I didn't go. I didn't need to. But word traveled fast. A small investment company bought the place for less than half its appraised value. Within 48 hours, a moving truck was parked out front, and within a week, a new family was unloading boxes. Emma and Jared moved into a 2-bedroom rental on the other side of town. From what I heard, it was smaller than their old living room. One Sunday, months later, I saw Emma in the grocery store. She was wearing an old sweater I recognized from her college days. Her hair pulled back in a way that made her look younger, almost fragile. She spotted me and froze. Then, after a pause, she walked over. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, Emma." There was an awkward beat before she said, I get it now. I didn't before. But I do now." I nodded. "That's all I ever wanted." She gave a small, almost embarrassed smile, then excused herself to finish shopping. As I walked back to my car, I realized something. The revenge hadn't been about destroying them. It had been about letting them face the world as it is, not as they wished it would be. The mortgage, the foreclosure, the downsizing. Those were just the visible symptoms. The real change was happening inside them, in the quiet places where pride had finally been replaced by humility. And for the first time in years, I felt like I had my life back. Spring came late that year. I was in my garden, clearing out the winter debris, when I spotted a robin hopping along the fence line. It struck me how life just goes on. No matter who loses a house, a job, or a relationship, the seasons don't stop to check if you're ready. I'd been ready for this new season long before I realized it. 2 months had passed since the foreclosure. I hadn't heard much from Emma or Jared, just a few text messages here and there. Polite, clipped updates. They'd moved into that small rental, sold off most of their furniture, and Jared had taken a second job delivering packages in the evenings. They weren't thriving, but they were surviving. And survival, I knew, was often the first step toward growth. One Saturday morning, I was in the checkout line at the farmer's market when I heard my name. "Mom." I turned, and there was Emma. She looked different, not in a tragic, defeated way, but in a stripped-down, almost refreshed way. Her makeup was lighter, her nails unpainted, and she was wearing simple jeans with a faded t-shirt in her basket. Eggs, bread, apples. No imported cheese. No fancy wine. She hugged me. A real hug, not the stiff, holiday version. "Hi," I said. "You look well." "I feel lighter," she admitted, pulling back. "It's weird. I thought losing everything would crush me, but it's like, without all the stuff, we're actually talking again. Cooking together. Even laughing sometimes." I smiled. "Sounds like you're learning to live without the noise." She nodded. "Yeah, I used to think money fixed everything. Now I get that it's just one piece of the puzzle." The next weekend, she invited me over for dinner. I'll admit, I hesitated. Part of me feared stepping back into the dynamic where I was expected to fix, fund, and forgive. But when I walked into their rental, I was greeted by the smell of chili simmering on the stove, and the sound of music playing softly in the background. The living room had only a couch, a coffee table, and a bookshelf with a few framed photos. No designer rug, no giant TV, just space. Jared came out from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "Hey, Mrs. B," he said, a nickname he hadn't used since before the wedding. "Glad you could make it." We ate at the small kitchen table, laughing about old stories, passing bread back and forth. It wasn't tea perfect. There were still unspoken things between us, but it was a start. Later that night, as I drove home, I realized something important. The revenge hadn't just been about pulling the safety net. It had been about giving them a chance to become people who didn't need one. I hadn't just taken back my money. I'd taken back my peace, my dignity, my right to say enough, without fear of being called cold or unloving. And somehow, in the wreckage, we'd all found a little more honesty. A month later, Emma called with unexpected news. "Mom, we've been saving. Not much, but enough to cover a few months ahead on rent. Jared's talking about taking classes to get certified for a better job, and I'm working weekends at the bakery down the street." I could hear pride in her voice. Real, earned pride. "That's wonderful," I said. "You should be proud of yourselves." There was a pause. Then, "We're proud of us, and I'm proud of you, too, for not rescuing us." Those words, simple as they were, felt like the true ending to everything. The following Christmas, the invitation came. Not in a casual text or a last-minute guilt trip, but in a handwritten card. Inside, in Emma's looping script, "We'd love for you to spend Christmas with us this year. No gifts, just food, games, and love." I sat with the card in my hands for a long time, remembering the sting of the last Christmas I'd been excluded from. How the rejection had felt like a verdict on my worth as a mother. Now, this card wasn't just an invitation to dinner. It was an acknowledgement that they wanted me there, not because I could bring money, but because I was family. Christmas Day came. The rental was decorated with homemade paper, snowflakes, and strings of lights. The chili pot was replaced with a roast chicken, surrounded by roasted vegetables. We ate, we laughed, we played cards until midnight. No one brought up the foreclosure. No one apologized again. No one needed to. When I left that night, Emma hugged me at the door. "Love you, Mom. I love you too," I said. And this time, it didn't feel like a patch over a wound. It felt like the truth. Revenge had been the spark that lit this change. But in the end, it wasn't about destruction. It was about forcing a reckoning and trusting that the people you love will find their way through it. I'd taken back everything I gave them, and in doing so, I'd given us all something we didn't know we were missing. A chance to start over. Without debt, without illusions, and without strings. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is walk away, not because you're weak, but because you finally realize your worth. If this story spoke to your heart, please give it a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so we can keep sharing stories that remind us all. Self-respect is priceless.